I thought we had to share it.
I know.
I thought we had to share this, so I'm surprised.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to MWA. This recognition was such a surprise when we learned about it earlier in the year because Crime Writers of Color has just turned 5 years old, and so it feels so new, but at the same time, I'm so impressed by and proud of what we have accomplished and grown into in just a few short years, and all of what our members have accomplished. It has grown into so much more than Kellye and Walter and I ever imagined. And this award is really for all of our members who've built something really special, such a wonderful, supportive community that Alex alluded to. And especially our volunteers. We have so many volunteers who really donate so much of their time and are really what makes the group thrive. And to be recognized by MWA and this wonderful mystery writers community that I love so much is so incredibly meaningful. And so I'd like to take just a minute to share briefly why it's especially meaningful to me personally. I began my mystery writing career just over a decade ago. And as wonderful as this whole mystery community was, I also was conscious of a gap. That same gap that I felt as a child when I was devouring mystery novels and finding so many absolutely fantastic books that I loved so much. But at the same time, I didn't see characters who looked like me and my multicultural family. And so Crime Writers of Color really is a group that helps fill that void. It's a group that creates the space for authors of color who are writing in the mystery field who haven't always found support to tell their stories. And before I get off this stage, I really need to say my final biggest thank you. And that is to the one person who is a tireless advocate and a cheerleader for everyone. A person who brings people together and really puts in the work. She is the daily heart and soul of the organization, and Crime Writers of Color would not exist as it is today without her. And I think you all know who I'm talking about, and that is Kellye Garrett. So.
I've cried. I was not going to cry, but here I am. All right. First of all, Alex, my bestie, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Gigi, I'm so glad to be up here with you. You know, you were the first person that I was a fan of to befriend me, and that friendship and that willingness to help me when I was just a baby writer was one of the reasons I knew that we needed to support a support group just for people of color. Thank you for being the best partner and the best good cop to my bad. I also need to thank Walter Mosley for not looking at me like I was some nut when I ran up to him at a panel because I heard through the grapevine he also wanted to start a group for Crime Writers of Color. Walter, I hope you know how much I value our friendship, and I really do listen to the advice you give me, even if you don't think I follow it. Thank you so much to the MWA board for giving us this honor. Trust me when I say we were not expecting it. And most importantly, I need to thank our more than 400 members, including 30+ volunteers, who all realize that a victory for one of us is a victory for all. Thank you for sharing your good news and giving advice, helping to create such a safe space. I'm a reader first and foremost, and I'm excited whenever a fellow writer of color contacts us about wanting to join the group, whether they are a huge name, a debut author, or just someone thinking of writing their first book. Our volunteers are the reason we have a website, a podcast, a YouTube page, a books page, conference liaisons, and much, much, much more. Thank you so much. This award is as much yours as it is me and Gigi's. However, I'm going to be keeping mine. I will not be sharing it with y'all. So this actually is not my first time at the Edgars. So I came right before my debut came out in 2017 as a guest of Joanne Love when she won her Raven Award. And Facebook memories actually reminded me that today, that was exactly 6 years ago. I was so excited, and I can remember walking into the room, and the first person I saw was a super famous, super successful white male author. And I looked at him really surprised, and he looked at me just as surprised. And that's when I realized I was one of a handful of black people in a room of hundreds of people. And I can remember it was me, Drew, Susan McNeil's husband, and a photographer. And I'm going to share something with you guys. I felt very uncomfortable that night. And I'm not the only person of color who's had that experience at crime fiction events. It can be hard to walk into a room where no one looks like you and makes no effort to welcome you. And it's one of the reasons why it was so important for me to co-found Crime Writers of Color. I didn't want to feel alone when I went into a room. But it's also really important to note that making sure the crime fiction community is a safe space and an inclusive space for everyone, no matter their gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or religion, isn't just my job. It's not just Gigi's job. It's not just the job of Crime Writers of Color or the Queer Crime Writers group. It's the job of everyone in here. And I get that everyone isn't like me, where you're gonna get on the stage in front of the most powerful people in the industry and basically yell at them, but there are some small things that we all can do. The easiest thing to do is to read books by marginalized authors, including people of color and LGBTQ authors. Next, share that you're reading those books. Recommend them in interviews and on your social media and other panels. Which leads me to the next one. Find out who else is on a panel when you get invited. Make sure it's not just straight, cisgendered white people. Recommend some marginalized authors who can also fit the panel theme. And if you are the one creating the panels, please stop forcing people of color and queer people to just be on diversity-focused panels. We can talk about more than just how hard it is to be marginalized. We can discuss culinary cozies, we can discuss creating characters, we can discuss the power of setting just as well as straight, cis white people can. If you are a bigger name and they ask you who should interview you for an event, again, give them a list of people of color, queer folks, and other marginalized people. You can find folks on both the Crime Writers of Color and queer crime websites. Trust me when I say it might make for a more fun conversation. And now we're gonna get to the not easy part. First, stop making excuses for problematic people and problematic behavior. We can all agree that things like sexual assault and the use of the N-word and the F-word are horrible, but we tend to downplay and ignore the smaller things, the microaggressions. Stop doing that. If a woman tells you that a man said demeaning things, don't tell her he's harmless, because he is not. If a queer person tells you a straight person's comment made them upset, don't say it was a joke, because it wasn't. If a person of color shares a white person called them the name of another person of color they look nothing alike, don't tell them it's not a big deal, because it is. I get a lot of times that you react like this because it makes you uncomfortable, but that's not a good excuse. Imagine how uncomfortable we feel. And finally, we all know the problematic people in crime fiction: the racist, the homophobic people, the misogynist, the folks who are anti-Semitic, the folks who are all four of those things. Realize you don't have to work with those people, even if you think it will help your career. Trust me when I say your career will be okay. There are other people who can blurb your book, other bookstores you can go to, other panels you can be on. And to the mob of people who are doing the things I mentioned, thank you. Please know I see you, and I appreciate that you know that there's things that are more important than selling copies of your book. And to those of you who are uncomfortable at this speech, I know these conversations can be scary. I'm scared myself right now. But trust me when I say that in the long run, our community will just be stronger when it's one where we all truly feel like we belong in this room. So thank you so much.
Ah.